all join me for our invocation. May those gathered here today enjoy the many givings of Rotary. May we abide by the principles of trust, fellowship, and ethics. May we place service above self in our endeavors as we serve to change lives this Rotary year. And may we always test ourselves and our efforts to be sure they are the truth, good for all concerned, of benefit to mankind, and providing peace and understanding. Amen. Calvin.
Please join with me the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under indivisible, liberty and justice.
Thank you, Calvin. Okay, we have some announcements this morning. It's going to get a little interesting when we have two announcements about two events happening on the same day.
Mike, I'm going to mute everybody. You mind muting yourself before.
Okay. Before we get to those announcements, though, I wanted to congratulate a few people. I'm not sure if everyone had a chance yet to read the monthly email that Cindy sent out, but hopefully you will. Those are fantastic and really enjoyable to read. But we have 3 key Rotary anniversaries this month. So Tom McGlashan, I see Tom out there in Zoom, 30 years in Dublin Rotary.
Woohoo!
Cap Clegg, I see Cap. I don't see his face, but I see his name. Cap, 25 years in Dublin AM Rotary.
Yay.
And Marilee, who I don't think is with us this morning, also 25 years Dublin AM Rotary. Okay, do we have any announcements that aren't related to the two events? Well,
Just wanted to announce again, we are having a joint meeting with the Dublin Worthington Club on Wednesday. Oh, I should know this. Morning, everybody. We are having a joint meeting with the Dublin Worthington Club on Wednesday, January 26th at noon at the Dublin Rec Center. It is going to be hosted by primarily Dublin Worthington, but we're also sponsors as well as Marysville and Tri-Village. It is about empowering girls, and we are inviting all of you to come join us, and there will be quite a few other clubs in the district invited, as well as the district and zone brass. So we're even trying to get the incoming Rotary International president to attend via Zoom. So emails will be going out shortly with invitations. There is a link on there to register. It's $15 if you want lunch. You can pick one of, I think, 4 different lunch choices, or you can attend via Zoom. So either way is fine. Susan?
And you can invite non-Rotarians.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's open to anybody who would like to attend. And it's just information about how we go about empowering girls in today's society, primarily in the middle school and high school age groups. So thank you.
all right, thank you all. I am going to invite up Dave Hansen from the Dublin Worthington Club, who is going to talk about an event happening the first Saturday of February that is not the Polar Bear Open.
That's right. Hey, I'm just a foot soldier. I didn't know about this. On Saturday, we're going to have a scholarship bowling event. It's going to be at the Columbus Palace. And the objective here is to raise funds for scholarships for disadvantaged youth. Obviously, we have plenty of them around here, as you know. But we also have a program in the Dominican Republic, and we're supporting technical training there for students at high schools. So at any rate, this is going to be from 12 to 4. Now, I understand that the golf event will be from 8 to 12. So those of you that can fly might want to participate in both of them. You know. At any rate, I'd appreciate your passing this on to other people who may not participate in the bowling event. And I'm really pleased that we'll announce this other event on January 26th. I know that we're very excited about that. We'll have, I think, up to 80 people participating.
I think we can even do more. We opened it up to 2 rooms now, so I think our max is somewhere around 120.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, yes, we'll look forward to seeing you all there. And if you know of anybody who might be interested in our voting event on February 5th, please let them know about it. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Dave.
Thank you.
Following closely over Dave's shoulder is Pete Bulbrady.
Good morning. Good morning, golfers. February 5th is our annual outing. This is the 25th annual. So we'll be doing shirts, and to show our pride, this year's shirts will be purple. So we're up to about 20 hole sponsors already. We're up to about 20 golfers already. It is available on Eventbrite. If anyone wants to sign up or has trouble signing up, please let me know. I'll try to walk you through that. But we're looking forward to this great event. And if anyone wants to step up as a whole sponsor or a regular sponsor, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who wants a flyer? I have extra flyers too.
And it's on Facebook. Yeah, you have emails. It's everywhere. You
Yeah.
should. Great. All right. Bringing up our sergeant, who is doing a repeat command performance because Peter Georgeton has a sick daughter this morning, is David Bentz. So a round of applause for David for filling in.
Right, good morning, everybody. We do not have any guests here in the room other than our speaker who will introduce shortly. Do we have any guests on Zoom that need to be introduced? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Well, Peter, yeah, he was going to be the sergeant today, and Peter, as you know, is always very well prepared, unlike me. But he did provide us with some notes on this day. So I'm going to read this. In 83 BC, on this day, Mark Antony, the Roman general and politician, was born. In 1741, Benedict Arnold, the notorious Revolutionary War traitor, was born. In 1784, Congress, the Articles of Confederation version, not the current one, ratified the Treaty of Paris with Great Britain, which formally brought the Revolutionary War to an end. In 1900, Giacomo Puccini's opera Tasio opened in Rome. And in 1919, Andy Rooney of 60 Minutes fame was born. Finally, today is New Year's Day under the Julian calendar. So for those procrastinators out there, Happy New Year.
It's a chance to have a second New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
If you've blown the first one, you get another chance.
Monday is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and in recognition of this day, I have some trivia. Martin Luther King Jr.'s wife, Coretta Scott King, attended college at what Ohio school? Anybody know? Antioch, yes, correct. Okay.
Does he win something for that? That was pretty impressive.
You don't have to pay any fines, so. Okay, yeah, so for fines, the sergeant's budget, and Dave's stressing over this, has been very stretched lately. We figured out two primary reasons for that. One is people attending on Zoom that we can't find. And the other is just general inflation is eating into our budget. So for fines today, if you've attended one of the last 4 meetings on Zoom, that's $1. And then everybody else, it's $1 just for the cost of inflation. So,
Cough it up, let's go.
and by the way, as sergeants, we are working on being able to give Dave, we want to get the budget where we can give Dave a 10% pay raise as head sergeant.
That sounds good.
All right, so today our small pot is $20 and our large pot is $463, I believe. First ticket drawn gets a choice of which one they want. And the first ticket is 8170949. All right, do you want small pot or a chance at the large pot?
I'll do the large pot.
Okay, I'll come to you in just a second. All right, this is for the small pot, $20. 8170935.
That's me.
All right, got $20. Surprise, surprise.
Hey, if you don't play, you can't win.
Okay, thank you, David. I am gonna invite Pete back up to introduce our speaker.
Good morning. I'm going to invite Pat O'Laughlin, who is president of the.
Oh, we got a winner. Congratulations.
Amber won the large pot for all of you on Zoom.
How much did she get?
463, right? Yeah.
For her. Way we get electricity in this, particularly in this state, is quite complicated. It's, you just pay your bill to this firm. It seems like it goes up all the time, hopefully buy better bulbs, a better furnace and stuff, a better refrigerator. But how it's distributed has been quite complicated. He's been a neighbor of mine for at least 15 years. We've gotten together dozens of times, and each time I've asked him, peppered him just with, 100 questions. How does this work? How about the renewables? What about the rates and natural gas prices? And damn, it's cold out. It's really hot, and then what does that do to your loads? And all this, it's been just very insightful and valuable learning about how electricity is generated and then distributed to you and the complexity around it. So I've asked him to speak to this, just to teach us about this, and I think that you'll find it quite interesting. So Pat O'Laughlin.
Thanks, Steve. I spent most of my career hoping people like you never have to think about this much, but more and more we do. So first of all, I don't know if any of you are familiar with electric cooperatives. So I work for Buckeye Power. We're an electric cooperative owned by other electric cooperatives. There are 25 of them here in Ohio. And just to give you the 101 on them, they're member-owned electric utilities that are controlled by an elected board of directors that's from their consumers. So they elect their board from amongst people that buy electricity from them. They were formed back in the 1930s during the New Deal thing to get electricity in parts of the country where big companies like AEP didn't want to build out there because they weren't going to make enough money. So it was literally farmers getting together with their neighbors, borrowing money from the federal government, which made it possible, and building their own lines and started to connect them to parts of the country that never had electricity. So that federal loan program financed it. They operate on a not-for-profit basis, although we're also not for loss. So we do make money every year, invested into the systems, and then that capital is rotated back to people that buy electricity over a long period of time. So they get money back eventually. In Ohio, we're largely self-regulated, so we're not. So the board that's elected sets rates and rules of operation for the co-op within laws that exist, and they operate within certified territory. So some of you might even be a member of Union Rural Electric. They're around your own village or Consolidated Electric outside of Delaware, but most of us are places you've never been, never heard of. So my company generates electricity. They distribute it locally. In between us is the power grid that we have to buy services from the bigger companies like AEP to get it to our local areas. So there's supposed to be a map there that shows where they all are. There's 25 of them. We cover about 40% of the land area of the state of Ohio and only about 7 or 8% of the people. So like I said, we are largely in places that you haven't been, but it is about 1 million people that provide service to across the state. We generate electricity with kind of all of the above approach. We've had coal power plants. We're part owners of 3 power plants that use coal today. And we have 2 natural gas power plants that are here in Ohio. And then we buy from a series of different renewable projects, including the Niagara Falls. We get a little bit of hydropower from that. We have some solar. We have about 23 small solar facilities around the state, and a variety of biogas projects, either on agricultural waste or landfills. And we have about 400 employees across 4 locations. Most of them at our largest power plant over near Steubenville, Ohio. So that's what a coal-fired power plant looks like. That's our Cardinal Station. It was first built in the 1960s by AEP. It was one of the first partnerships between an investor-owned utility like AEP and a cooperative like our company. Down at the far end, you can see is the original plant, and then we added this 3rd unit down here where the big cooling tower is about 10 years later. So it's been operating for a little over 50 years. The first 49 and a half years, AEP operated the plant for us, and 3 years ago they turned the keys over to us, and we now operate it on behalf of them. They're part owners, as they've been kind of backing out of power generation, particularly here in Ohio. So there's 3 600 megawatt units. That may not mean a lot, but it's a pretty big power plant. We do have state-of-the-art environmental controls. You hear about coal being dirty. Well, we clean up pretty much everything that you can take out of the flue gas. We have a water treatment plant on site. We have a landfill, a sanitary landfill to put any waste that we have in. So pretty much everything is contained on the site. We produce about 10 to 12 million megawatt hours a year. Put that in perspective, in the state of Ohio, we all use about 150 million megawatt hours a year. So it's a little less than 10% of electricity used in the state is just produced at this one plant. It's a big plant. And it sits really in sort of the Saudi Arabia of coal. The coal fields in that area of the country are some of the best in the world. And so that's why it sits there. We have about $1.2 billion invested in that plant. About $1 billion of it is for environmental control systems. The rest of it is the making electricity part of it. And so it's a big part of our investment to provide electricity. Okay, so we're also part of a larger grid. There's a grid operator here for this part of the country. You can sort of see from the map. They're in about 13 states. It's called PJM. It used to be Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, but they've obviously expanded. Now they go all the way to Chicago. They serve all of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Virginia, parts of Indiana, the Chicago area, parts of other states. So it's about 22% of U.S. electricity usage is managed by this grid operator. They're located over near Valley Forge, and they tell us when to run our power plants, when to turn them up, when to turn them down. They set the price on an hourly basis every day of the year for us. That helps determine which plants run. And then they manage the transmission network across that region, so to make sure the power flows are even across that and within the ranges that they operate. So they really set the rules for the companies that operate in this region. And one of the things that started to worry me and a lot of other people is the retirements of power plants. You've heard a lot about this. Since 2011, about 25% of the existing power plants in that region have retired. They're no longer, and when you retire a power plant, it doesn't come back. It's dead and gone.
And how many have been built?
And they built less, but a similar amount. And most of what's retired has been coal, although some has been natural gas. Almost everything that's been built is either natural gas or renewables, solar and wind in our case. So it's we've traded sort of this steady, old-fashioned, reliable thing that we knew about for some things that have a little more challenges during certain times of the day and certain times of the year. And we've also retired about 20,000 megawatts since 2014's polar vortex, where this whole region came within one power plant going offline of having to start rolling blackouts like what we've seen in some other states recently. So we're not, like we don't have anything to worry about. Slides have disappeared. I'm going to get them back. Well, I'll tell you what I was going to talk about then. So in this region, so first of all, lost the graphs. The graphs don't come through, I guess. So I was going to tell you, so you all heard about what happened in California a couple of years ago when they had rolling blackouts. I don't know if you remember that. It was hot in the whole western coast. California has been going towards trying to be 100% renewable for several years. they're not there yet. They're about 40% right now. They mostly rely on Oregon and Nevada and Arizona when the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing. But they continue to push into this. And so when it gets hot in that whole region, they found out after at 7 p.m., once the sun goes down, it gets dark, they don't have enough solar energy and they actually have rolling blackouts because guess what? The sun went down that day. I mean, sort of a predictable problem, right? But that's how it worked because Oregon and Arizona didn't have enough extra to provide them that day or that week. Texas, you heard about last year, it was very cold in Texas. We had a winter storm Uri, every cold day has a name now, but and it was very cold. People say it was historic. Actually, I looked it up. It happens about every 25 years. It's that cold in Texas. They've had 4 other events in the last 100 years that were very similar for like 72 hours temperature. They froze their natural gas system. So they rely on a lot of wind, a lot of solar, and a lot of natural gas. And some of the natural gas fields froze up, some of the supplies, some of the plants froze up because they're mostly built for hot weather. And they had rolling blackouts for a whole week. They also had price spikes, so people have securitized. So a company like ours had a power bill for that 1 week of a little over $2 billion. The year before, their entire power bill for the year before was $700 million. So in 1 week, the price of electricity was 3 times what it was for the whole previous year. Think about that in your own budget. So the companies are like, well, how do we pass that on? So what they've done is securitize it, which means they issue bonds that are collected from the old people in Texas over 30 years. So we sort of push that can down the road. If you look at here, so they're getting about 40% of the power from renewables, wind and solar, about 50% of it from natural gas, and not much from everything else. Here, we're kind of the opposite. We still have about 25% coal, about 20% nuclear. We get about half of it from natural gas and much less from wind and solar. And if you look outside, you can see why. Most people here in Ohio understand why we don't use a lot of wind and solar because they live in Ohio. It's just not a really reliable resource here. But there's still a lot of pressure to do more and more. We've actually had standards from state passed that required certain amounts of it. Those have been repealed because it really just didn't make sense to keep pushing down this road. So what's happened is we've had to now start to worry about natural gas. Looks like about every other chart shows up. I'm not sure why. So we've had to start worrying about natural gas. On the coldest winter day of each year, there's plenty of natural gas in the ground, but there's not enough pipeline space to get it to everybody that wants to use it. And so it gets rationed on those days. And as we get more and more reliant on natural gas for electricity, more and more concerns. What we have done, though, is greatly reduced. So we reduced all our traditional pollution. I told you about that earlier. Carbon dioxide is going way down in the United States, too. And it's almost entirely from electricity production. We have shifted a lot of coal generation to natural gas. We've shifted a lot of all kinds of fossil fuels to wind and solar. And so we're down about 14% total CO2 for about the same amount of energy in the United States. We really talked about that, but we're doing better than almost anyone in the world. Almost all of that's come from electric power. Transportation is now the biggest emitter of carbon dioxide. Cars and trucks and planes. That's about the same as it's always been. It hasn't really gone up. It just has to stay about the same. And then your homes and buildings and everything else makes up the rest of that number, 30%. So we're continuing to drive that down here in the US. Meanwhile, in the world, in that same period of time, it's gone up about 25%. So, we're talking about a global problem. We're down 14%. The world is up 25%. And almost all the decreases come from power sector, from switching to renewables and switching to natural gas. So the things that I'm worried about right now, as I think about what we're doing, is number one, extremely cold weather. We have about 20% more electricity demand in the summer on the hottest day than we do in the winter. And so that's what we always plan for and worried about. But now with our reliance on natural gas, our concerns for reliable supply have switched to the coldest day of the winter. So that's really become our new sort of thing to worry about. Right now, energy prices and availability are tight. Coal mines have shut down largely, or they're selling it overseas for a lot more than we'll pay for it. So there's very little this winter, as we're coming into this winter, there's very little coal supply available. We're down to we usually would have a 30 or 40 day supply of coal in the ground. Right now we have about 10 or 11 days at our power plant. Yeah, which is a lot less than we'd like to have this time of year. So we're on the phone with the coal guys every day, making sure that the barges are coming. Where we sit, we're within about, we buy all of our coal in 100 miles of our power plant. That's not true in some of the, half the coal in the country comes from the Powder River Basin in Wyoming and goes across much of the southern and western United States. We happen to sit right on some good coal reserves. The lessons learned from California, Texas, this polar vortex, it doesn't seem like we've learned a lot. It's like we just kind of keep pushing down the same path, even though we've seen these really predictable shortages that come up if we don't really plan for a resilient electric system. Decarbonization is a big push still. We're continuing to talk about that. Like, our company still operates coal-fired power plants. A lot of people would like us to stop doing that. We don't really have a good way to back up these other renewable supplies if we just completely get rid of them. What I hope going to happen is we'll just run them less and less at the time and pick up more wind and solar when it's available.
Talk about the nuclear power plants that are being built.
Yeah, so so we have 2 nuclear power plants here in Ohio that are still operating. They've been sort of challenged to keep operating, and they're sort of expensive. But they're building 2 new nuclear power plants in Georgia. They're the only 2 that have been built in this country in about 30 years now. The 2 plants together are about as big as our Cardinal power plant. Right now, it looks like it's going to cost about $22 billion to build that.
In your budget.
Our plant is $1 billion, and it's so 20 times as much as what we have invested in our plant.
Same amount.
It's about the same amount of revenue. So nuclear has just become prohibitively expensive. They went to a standard design. They thought they solved all the cost overrun problems with this latest version. So it's going to be a while to build any big nuclear power plants. And so, the biggest challenge that I have in my job right now is, our electric grid works on the principles of science and engineering, and mostly people want it to work on the principles of politics and environmental goals right now. It's just really hard to reconcile those 2 things. We're cleaner than we've ever been. We're as reliable as we've ever been. We've kept the price about the same for the last 10 years now. We haven't raised our rates in 10 years. But it just gets more and more difficult to kind of keep all the balls in the air as we go to that. Like wind energy is a good example. So we're invested in a wind farm out in Iowa because it produced more wind than we get here in Ohio. And the first thing we found out is every wind farm in the U.S. produces about twice as much electricity at night as it does during the day. Guess what? People use about twice as much electricity during the day as they do at night. And that's just an irreconcilable problem with wind energy. So the more and more we do that, we're getting a lot of nighttime energy, but not a lot when we need it. Solar is sort of the same thing. It's great during the middle of the day, but as you get towards like this time of the morning, it's dark in winter is when people use a lot of electricity where you're getting ready to go to work and businesses are firing up.
So what are your
In the evening.
peak hours?
So in the winter, it's around 7 or 8 a.m. and around 7 to 9 p.m. In the summer, it's 5 p.m. And you think, oh, the sun's out at 5 p.m. Well, we get the most solar energy at noon, and it starts going down at 5 p.m. It's only about 40% of what it is at noon. So it's already gone down a fair amount by then. Yeah.
You can't store that energy?
So that's what everybody asks us. Not really. So we have a few utility batteries now that have just gone on in the last couple of years. They're like, I don't have enough decimal places to tell you how little supply that is. And the other thing is the best batteries today last about 3 hours. And you really need something that lasts about 12 or 16 hours to really handle that difference in timing. And you know how you get a 12-hour battery? You have 4 3-hour batteries sit next to each other. And that's just really, really expensive. I think we're going to have something other than lithium. They're using lithium ion. Same thing they're putting in cars, just giant car batteries, basically. And we're going to have come up with something better than that to use it for that scale. Yeah. Well,
one of your previous slides showed almost no wind energy being used by you guys, but you see these wind farms going up all over the place.
Yeah.
Is that just a matter of timing, or are they in the wrong place for you to use those?
So, like I said, we were part of a wind farm and we got out because just the numbers just didn't work. You get a lot of it at night. It's not very valuable. It's still reasonably expensive. So who's buying all the wind and solar power in Ohio is Amazon, Google, Facebook have all built large data centers here in Ohio. And they've got a commitment to do 100% renewable, which is they buy the same amount of energy that they use, but they use companies like us to make sure it works all day long because they're very concerned about reliability, as you can imagine. So that's Ohio State University, the city of Columbus is now got a big, so it's all large corporate buyers largely is where most of that is going. And really in Ohio, it's all concentrated just up in a few counties up in Northwest Ohio. We're seeing these huge solar farm developments now that are proposed. There's not many have been built yet. And we're starting to see a lot of pushback on land use where people don't really want to live next to a 1,000-acre solar farm, just like they never used to want to live next to a coal-fired power plant either. So, you know, these large utility scale plants that still got the not in my backyard problem that everybody else is having. You know, a few little like a research.
Storage of power, the issue of solar and wind.
Yes, we don't have a good way to do it.
We don't have it, we don't have the capacity.
Yeah, we don't have the technology, we don't have the capacity, we don't have enough money. We don't have any-
The problem of climate is
Yeah.
caused by your solution. So as we have all these strange weather incidents, aren't they? Are climate change, is the climate change a result of?
That's a good question. And there's a lot of answers to it. And I'll tell you, one of them is, there's nothing about more CO2 in the atmosphere that makes it really cold in Texas. That's just not a thing, okay? I mean, people say, well, every weather event's because of that. Well, it's not really. I mean, it is a warming process. There's talk about how, drought and waterfall, those kind of things, okay, that, people have models and theories about it, and there's a wide range of opinions about it, but cold weather in Texas is really not a thing, we start playing everything on climate change. I don't know. Most of the research says it's an 80-year thing, it's going to take 80 years to play out. A lot of people are saying what's happening right now.
Does people mean lack of people working?
Excuse me?
You have people.
So people, the thing I worry about people is, we're a consumer-owned cooperative. People depend on us more than ever to have a reliable supply of electricity, and we're doing more than ever to kind of screw it up right now in the way we're going about it. So I do really worry about the health and welfare of people. I don't know if you pay much attention to what happened in Texas, but it was a human tragedy. A lot of people lost their homes, people died. People are not prepared to live without electricity for days on end, and that's what happens. Once you have to start doing these rolling blackouts, it's really hard to catch up, and so they end up lasting for days at a time. And the people we serve are mostly poorer than most. They're lesser educated, and they can't afford their electricity bill to double. So it's an important part of what we do. We're, at the end of the day, we're public service, and people depend on us more than ever. It used to be back in the day, we'd get postcards from people like, hey, the power's out, we can get back here and put it back on, that'd be great. Farmers, that we're more self-reliant. We don't expect that today.
Talk about the electricity prices in Germany, because they've gone renewable.
So Germany's sort of got a case study of what not to do. They've gone to a very large amount of renewables. They have they built more renewable power than they had traditional power because it doesn't work as often. So power plant like we have will run 70–80% of its capacity will be produced on an annual basis. A wind power plant will be like 30% of its capacity produced because it doesn't work in wind as well. A solar plant will be like 15–20% of its capacity will actually be converted to energy. So they've built a lot of renewables, and the price of power there, well, you guys all pay about somewhere around 15 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity here in Ohio. That's about average. In Germany, they're paying about 50 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. And they built all these renewables. The idea was going to bring down their CO2, but what they found is they had to run their coal plants more to back it up, and so they're actually having a reduction in CO2. And they still depend on Sweden and France to provide hydro and nuclear to back them up too.
Interesting coincidence, Bonnie posted on our chat that her power just went out.
Yeah.
One thing I'm worried about is, and everyone once in a while you'll hear about it where there's a problem in the power grid and it causes a rolling blackout. Everything just shuts down. And I don't know, I remember a few years ago, something happened up in north and eastern Ohio.
Yeah, that's right. That was up in Cleveland. That's been about 15 years ago now. Yep, started in Cleveland.
So,
yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, so these grid operators like PGM, they were just, the one that in that part of, that was managing that part of the grid at the time was very new at it. And that was, I would say, more of a oops than it was really a technical problem. But they've had to get better at how do they manage it. Because we haven't had these large grid operators very long. It's a relatively new thing since 2000. And so they've gotten better and better at figuring out how to manage these grids across a wide range. Hopefully that kind of problem we're not going to see again, but they are interconnected, and it does, if you have a problem, it does spread to a wide range. You saw those several states that PGM operates. You can have a couple states have a problem. It is a big grid.
People have a choice if they're in a certain area, like whether they use you or if you're in an area where you guys operate, you said about 90 people. Yeah. Do any of those people, can they say, well, I want?
For the most part, no. Ohio's got a law that sort of divided up Ohio back in 1980 between utilities for wherever your property is the utility that you get, and then different utilities have different ways of doing things. But for the most part, it's where your property is for electricity.
Can't you buy, so even if it's AEP, can't you buy something underneath that?
Yes, so with AEP, you could buy your production from somebody else, like you could buy all solar even from some companies if you wanted to. Our company's not set up that way because people that are buying it own the company, so we're more integrated, we're more like it used to be. But so you can buy your supply from somebody, but you're still connected to AEP and you're going to get service from them, get billed by them.
You done any, I'm sure you have, analysis, this is a vehicle question. Recent electric vehicles.
Yeah.
It looks like that's
Really good question. Yeah. So
what kind of advance it will take.
yeah. So it is moving forward, and we're trying to figure out like how fast. So far we have seen it's almost immeasurable so far. But as you know, all the car companies are saying they're going to make almost all electric cars. So we're seeing that it's going to come pretty fast over the next 5 or 10 years. And most estimates are that it's going to increase our use of electricity by 30 to 40% across the country. So that's another sort of wrinkle in this whole thing. So the good news is I think we will be able to use a lot more renewable energy to fill that in. So it's going to be at night. We just got to keep enough of the fossil fuel stuff around to be able to balance those out. So I think we'll be able to add a lot of rules to pick up a lot of that.
What if they all buy an electric car or block and go plug in?
Yeah, so that's the other thing is
Can the block take it?
it depends. I think the answer is it depends on everything. So when your houses were, depends how old your house is and neighborhood and how they were built. A lot of houses were a lot less energy efficient than they are today. Your refrigerator, if you buy a refrigerator today, it uses about 20% of the electricity of a refrigerator that you bought 20 years ago. And every refrigerator that's sold is about 20% less, 20%, 80% less, 20%. So there's a lot of things that are light bulbs. You used to have 60 and 100 watt light bulbs. Now you have 6 and 9 watt light bulbs. So that helps a little bit. But I think if everybody comes in and plugs them in at the same time, we can still have problems. So that's one of the other things is how do you manage this grid where people all want to come home and plug in their car. And you're probably going to see some pricing around what time of day you do that, but they incentivize you to plug in at 9 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. I think that's probably going to, that'll help balance it out. There's going to be places where it doesn't have enough capacity. They're going to have to do some upgrades to the systems. The other thing, think about, so you think about like a big gas station that's got 20 pumps or something at it, like a Giant Eagle or whatever. So if we go to this fast charging where you can do it in 20 minutes instead of an hour or something, you're going to need a giant substation like what they have, over here on Solomon Road, sitting behind that gas station. That's the kind of
And how much
power
do
station.
those things cost?
They're like $5 or $10 million. $20 a coffee, something like that, yeah. So you're gonna have really expensive gas stations if we're gonna have this, I mean, this fast charging, like, you don't do it in 15 minutes. That's a lot of juice. You got 20 people doing it at once. Yeah, it's just. Yeah, so we're still figuring out how that's, I don't, I think it's gonna be hard to get to really, you're gonna want to charge. I guess this might be my answer. It's gonna be hard to get a lot of these really fast.
Plus, I think the electricity at those fast charging stations will be 2, 3, 4 times as much as your house
Probably.
to help pay for that.
But it's still pretty cheap. Electricity is pretty cheap compared to gasoline still right now. I think people see that charging home is less than gasoline. But you're right, you will have a lot more to pay for that station on the infrastructure to power it, right?
Do you see anything 20 years or 30 years down the road that might help us solve some of these problems? You know, fusion was one of the things around.
Yeah, so the technologies that people are kicking around right now is, you know, are we ever gonna figure out nuclear power? Because that's still a, you know, possibility. We're gonna continue to see more wind and solar, and we're gonna see some kind of battery storage that's gonna help store it. The big sort of hope right now is that hydrogen is gonna be a thing, but I'll tell you that there's a lot of difficulties with hydrogen. It's hard to store, it's hard to use, it's carbon free, and so people are very interested in figuring it out. But that's sort of the hope that's 20 years out there. And a lot of money going to develop. There's a lot of problems to solve too. We're going to be stuck with mostly what we do today for at least the next 10 or 15 years. There'll be changes, but it's going to be incremental.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Mike. Very uplifting. Which brings me to our quote of the week, which is from George Carlin. Electricity is really just organized lightning. Please remember to register for the polar bear. Next week, our speaker is Aaron Westbrook from Form 5 Prosthetics. Have a great week. Oh, really?